I turned 21 today. For my birthday, Dan and Phil are gonna watch this video. I don't know how controversial of an opinion this is, but I think this whole war thing is, like, kind of stupid. Like, it shouldn't be a thing. I think we should all just be able to love each other and be nice and kind. And if you don't like something, it doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's not for you. Me, not a donut fan. According to my professor, that makes me a communist. But I'm just a hippie with communistic tendencies. I'm a big fan of vintage. This wall, this is from a book, America 1920 to 1930. And I tore it all up and I put it on my wall as a collage because I refuse to have a boring room. You break my heart, ripping up these old books. I want to show it off. I want to put it on my wall, and it's pretty, and it's one of a kind. If I find a book at a thrift store that's kind of torn up, kind of ratty, or I find, like, a single ripped up page, that's cool! It's like I have this little gem of history. I have this old book. It is getting the most out of life. It is a Reader's Digest anthology of the last 25 years. Most of it. I did read Every Man His Own Naturalist, which is a story for another time. There's this one about eugenics. Like, this is like 1925 to 1945. Like, that was a huge thing. There's a Star Trek episode. There's several Star Trek episodes that are about the war on eugenics. Star Trek, there was canonically a eugenics war in 1990 where they made this race of, like, supermen, and then they took over the world, and then they found them, like, frozen, and then they ended up just putting them on some planet. Building a personality. Condensed from physical culture, Harry Emerson Fosdick, D.D., pastor of the Riverside Church, New York. A consulting psychologist told me recently that most cases of emotional maladjustment are due to the fact that people will not accept themselves. They resent their limitations. They want to be someone else. They keep daydreaming about what they would do if they had another's chance. And so, disregarding their own possibilities, they never make anything worthwhile out of themselves. Well, anybody can find sufficient cause to dislike his own lot. William Wilberforce, diminutive edition of a man, did not like himself. Boswell went to hear him speak once and said afterward, "I saw what seemed like a mere shrimp mounted on a table." But as I listened, he grew and grew until the shrimp became a whale. Wow. That shrimp of a man never had good health. For 20... That's a banger line. That shrimp of a man never had good health. I'm gonna start calling people shrimps of men. That was, Dan and Phil when they first met, and they were just fucking emo twinks. Fucking shrimps of men. Fucking emo shrimps. Emo. Ladders. Microwave. See? I'm a fan. I never read the Milk Fic or the Hat Fic, but I know of them. And I know what happens in the Hat Fic, vaguely. But I don't really care about the details because I know it's terrible. And so I don't prefer to ruminate on it. That shrimp of a man never had good health. For 20 years, on doctor's orders, he took opium to keep body and soul together and had courage never to increase the dose. But more than other Englishmen, he stopped the British slave trade. Okay. And as one stands in Westminster Abbey beside the grave of the Attorney General of the unprotected and the friendless. If you're unprotected and friendless, I love you. I'm your friend. So not anymore. But then I guess that would mean that I didn't love you. So if you have a friend, I love you because you're my friend. Westminster Abbey beside the grave of the Attorney General of Unprotected and the Friendless. One sees that the sensitive, suffering life translated itself into a persistent, unconquerable sympathy for downtrodden people, that a lusty hulk of a man in a perfect health never have felt. Never would have felt. Never would have felt. The most stimulating successes in history have come from persons who, facing some kind of limitations and handicaps, took them as part of life's game and played splendidly in spite of them. Once when Old Bull, the great violinist, was giving a concert, a string snapped and he transposed the composition and finished it on 3 strings. That is life, c'est la vie. To have your A string snap and finish on 3 strings. What the hell is an A string? Violinist. As soon as a man begins to accept this positive technique for handling his handicaps, they present themselves to him as opportunities, always challenging, sometimes fascinating. Rebellion against your handicaps gets you nowhere. Self-pity gets you nowhere. One must have the adventurous daring to accept oneself as a bundle of possibilities and undertake the most interesting game in the world, making the most of one's best. In the battle with the Saracens, I don't know how to do a Spanish accent. Oi. Caramba. You know, Sean Spencer, he's half Mexican from Psych. Yeah, James Roday Rodriguez. At the time, he was going by James Roday, but then they whitewashed him after season 3. They started color grading it, and they washed out his forehead, and they made him look super pale, and they started referring to him and Gus as a white guy and a black guy. When in seasons 1 through 3, he was racially ambiguous and bisexual. And then they made him get upset when someone thought he was gay one time. Sean Spencer would never be upset for someone thinking he was flirting with a man. The way he talks to Lassie. Now, Spain. So the story runs, the Scots threw the heart of Robert the Bruce ahead of them, and then all their might fought toward it. That is the method of procedure. Take charge of your life, hurl some ideal and hope ahead, and then fight toward it. Organize your living around a purpose. Many folk fail to become personalities because they think that life is something we find instead of something we create. The fact is that existence is what we find. The big busyness of being a person is to take existence and so organize it around our plans and purposes that it becomes a life. A friend of mine landed in Boston half a century or more ago. His and his old Scotch father had told him that he was less than average ability. He began his life in America as a foundry man, and he roomed over a saloon, such as was his existence to start with. What he made of it, however, was a great life, for he turned out to be George A. Gordon, one of the best scholars of Harvard ever graduated. For over 40 years in the Old South Church in Boston, his pastorate was one of the most notable for intellectual quality and spiritual influence in the annuals of American churches. His existence was what he found. His life was what he created. Often the best friend a man has is not comfort, but the challenge of antagonistic environment to awaken his slumbering soul. At least 3 factors enter into the achievement of this sort of personality. First, imagination. Great living starts with a picture, held in some person's imagination, of what he would like someday to do or be. Florence Nightingale dreamed of being a nurse. Edison pictured himself as an inventor. All such characters escaped the mere shove of circumstance by imagining a future so vividly that they headed for it. Look at John Keats, orphaned in early boyhood, pressed by poverty, lacerated by the cruelty of his literary critics, disappointed in love, stricken by tuberculosis, and finally shoved off the scene by death at 26. But with all his ill fortune, Keats' life was not driven by circumstance. For that day when, a youth, he picked up a copy of Spenser's Faerie Queene, and knew beyond doubt that he was too born to be a poet. Keats' life was drawn by a masterful purpose which gave him a lasting place among the world's renowned. I think, he said once, that I shall be among the English poets after my death. He got that picture in his imagination, and to him it was like the heart of Robert the Bruce to fighting Scots. Hold a picture of yourself long and steadily enough in your mind's eye, and you will be drawn toward it. Picture yourself vividly as defeated, and that alone will make victory impossible. Picture yourself vividly as winning, and that alone will contribute immeasurably to success. Do not picture yourself as anything, and you will drift like a derelict. Second, common sense. There's no use in a round peg's imagining itself fitted in a square hole. As a matter of fact, many people flounder around pitifully before they discover the true direction of their lives. Whistler, the artist, started out to be a general and was dropped from West Point because he could not pass in chemistry. Sir Walter Scott wanted to be a poet and turned to novel writing only when Byron outshowed him in his chosen field. Philip Brooks failed as a teacher before he turned to preaching. Study yourself and use your head in picturing your goal. But whatever with wisdom or without, pick a goal. Don't drift. Third, courage. Real personalities always have the kind of faith that produces courage. When his generation was against him, Richard Wagner had faith in his music, and it overcame the world. After centuries had borne unimpeachable testimony to the devastating virulence of yellow fever, a little group of American medical men in Cuba had a faith that it could be conquered, and it was. Charles Darwin worked for 20 years in the little English garden, succeeding and failing, trying and keeping on because he had faith that he had found a clue, and he conquered. Faith is not credulity. It is creative power. It is vision plus valor. Imagination, common sense, and courage. Even a moderate exercise of these will produce remarkable results. If a man is primarily after wealth, the world can whip him. If he is primarily after pleasure, the world can beat him. But if a man is primarily growing a personality, then he can capitalize anything that life does to him. Original article, copyright 1931, Physical Culture Publication Corps. Physical Culture, June 31. Condensed version, copyright 1931, The Reader's Digest Association, Incorporated. The Reader's Digest, August 31. Your marriage stands a better than average chance of being successful, according to Dr. L.S. Cottrell of Cornell and Professor E.W. Burgess of the University of Chicago. If your courtship lasted between 4 and 5 years, you are not an only child, you were married in church, you lived in a country during childhood and adolescence, you are fond of your mother and father, the wife worked before marriage, you don't change your residence often, the wife is a year or more older than the husband,